Miss Claire Parsons was known for her tough, no-nonsense attitude in the classroom. As a high school teacher in a prestigious school on the outskirts of Chicago, she was accustomed to dealing with wealthy, well-prepared students who had access to the best resources. She had earned a reputation for being a strict grader, always expecting the best from her students. She believed that hard work and dedication were the only paths to success, and she had little patience for anything less. One student, however, caught her attention in ways that were less than flattering. Emily Jacobs, a quiet, unassuming 16-year-old, was part of a lower-income family and often struggled to keep up with the rest of the class. Her clothes were modest, and she never seemed to have the newest textbooks or technology that her classmates had. She often came in late, as her mother worked 2 jobs and couldn't always drive her to school. Miss Parsons, though, didn't see any of this as a valid excuse. To her, Emily's performance was a reflection of laziness and lack of ambition. Despite her efforts to push Emily, the young girl's grades remained low, and her contributions in class were minimal. She rarely spoke up, and when she did, it was often met with a sharp rebuke from Miss Parsons, who would chastise her for not doing enough. Miss Parsons thought Emily was capable of more, but in her eyes, the girl simply wasn't trying hard enough. One day, after class, Emily stayed behind, clutching a piece of paper in her hands. Miss Parsons was grading papers at her desk when Emily hesitantly approached her. "Miss Parsons, I've been working on a project for the global science competition," Emily began, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I was hoping you could take a look at it. I think it could be good enough to enter." Miss Parsons barely looked up from her papers. "I don't have time for extracurriculars right now, Emily," she said sharply. "You should focus on your grades first. You can barely pass my class as it is. Maybe the competition isn't for you." Emily's face fell, but she nodded quietly, stuffing the paper back into her bag. "I understand. I just thought, maybe it could help." Miss Parsons didn't notice how much her words had stung. She had been dismissive of Emily's efforts before, and this interaction was no different. To her, the competition didn't matter. It was more important that Emily focused on getting her grades up to standard. A few weeks passed, and Miss Parsons continued her usual routine, teaching, grading, and correcting papers. She noticed Emily's grades didn't improve, and she wasn't surprised. In fact, she wasn't expecting much from her at all. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. One Monday morning, the principal, Mr. Stevens, called for an assembly. The students were all gathered in the gymnasium, murmuring with curiosity. Miss Parsons stood at the back of the room, eyeing the students as they waited for the announcement. Mr. Stevens stepped up to the podium, a wide grin on his face. "I have some exciting news for all of you. One of our students has just won the global science competition." The room fell silent. Then Mr. Stevens continued. "The winner is Emily Jacobs." There was a stunned silence, followed by scattered applause and hushed whispers. Miss Parsons' heart skipped a beat as she turned to look at Emily, who stood up from her seat, wide-eyed and clearly surprised by the announcement. The applause was polite, but Miss Parsons could see the skepticism in some of her classmates' eyes. No one expected Emily, the quiet, overlooked girl, to be the one to bring home such a prestigious award. Emily walked up to the front of the gymnasium, her head slightly lowered as she accepted the recognition. The principal congratulated her, and the audience cheered, but Miss Parsons stood frozen, her thoughts racing. How could Emily have won? She had barely done anything in class. In fact, Miss Parsons had almost forgotten about the project she had shown her. How had she pulled off something so remarkable? After the assembly, Miss Parsons approached Emily in the hallway. Emily was surrounded by a group of her friends, who were congratulating her with enthusiasm. But when Emily saw Miss Parsons, she stepped away from the group, her face flushing slightly. "Miss Parsons," Emily said quietly, "I just wanted to thank you for letting me work on the project. I know you didn't think I could do it, but it turned out okay in the end." Miss Parsons swallowed hard, the weight of her previous words settling like a stone in her stomach. She had written off Emily, dismissed her potential, and now here she was, standing before her, not just as a student, but as an international winner. I didn't expect this, Emily, Miss Parsons admitted, her voice filled with a mixture of admiration and guilt. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. Emily smiled softly, her eyes filled with quiet pride. I don't think anyone expected it. But sometimes, you have to prove it to yourself, not anyone else. Miss Parsons felt a lump form in her throat. She had been so focused on grades and performance that she had failed to recognize the deeper qualities in Emily: the drive, the creativity, the resilience. Emily had been working on her project in secret, dedicating countless hours to it, while Miss Parsons focused on everything she thought mattered: grades, appearances, and appropriate effort. But what Emily had demonstrated was far more valuable: perseverance and passion. You've taught me something, Miss Parsons said, her voice thick. You showed me that there's more to success than just what's in the textbooks. You followed your own path, and that's something I need to learn to recognize in all my students. Emily's eyes shone with gratitude. Thank you, Miss Parsons. I think this means more than any grade could. Over the next few weeks, Miss Parsons made an effort to change the way she interacted with her students. She stopped judging them solely based on their academic performance and started to see them for who they really were. She began encouraging creativity and independent thinking, recognizing that not all success could be measured by grades or standardized tests. And as for Emily, her victory in the global science competition was just the beginning. She went on to secure scholarships and eventually became a renowned scientist. But the most important lesson she imparted was to Miss Parsons: that success is not always obvious at first glance, and sometimes it's the quietest people who have the greatest potential. This story highlights the importance of looking beyond surface-level appearances and expectations. Emily's triumph teaches us that potential can often be hidden, and what matters most is believing in yourself, especially when others don't. Miss Parsons' transformation from a teacher focused on traditional metrics to one who recognized the deeper qualities of her students is a powerful reminder that every person has something unique to offer.